again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Can't Wait. Sounds terrible. We're sponsored by Leo on Sports, the new sports talk show brought to you by the Vatican Radio Network. Catch Leo on Sports at a podcast distributor near you. That's Patrick, that's Rachel, and that's Eleni, the queen of terribleness. And we have so many terrible things that we can cover today. So speaking of Vatican City, last week I mused, maybe that's not the right word, but I think I mused. Why does the Pope have so much time to meet with Chicago politicians? The mayor had just come there with a gaggle of Chicago dignitaries, all bearing sports jerseys and other sports paraphernalia. And now, fresh on the heels of session ending, more politicians made the pilgrimage. So we hear that former state senator and soon-to-be former RTA chairman Kirk Dillard went to the Vatican to talk about AI with the Pope. House State Rep Cam Buckner, fresh off the Bears negotiations, visited Rome, brought the Pope a U of I football jersey. I also learned something new.
Does he look like a football player?
I played defensive line, but I wouldn't want to be in front of him.
So I don't know if the Pope played football in Pop Warner or if the Vatican is fielding a team, but we can cover that in the Pope's Sports podcast. So, none of us had good answers for this. I think we were all somewhat amused. And sure enough, over the just a few days ago, over the weekend, the Chicago Tribune had an editorial saying it's raining papal blessings for minor Chicagoland Pols. And if I'm Mayor Johnson, I would say minor? Ouch. That's hurtful. And the editorial says, whatever else one might say about His Holiness Pope Leo, there can be no question he has done right by the minor political pilgrims of Sweet Home Chicago, to the point where we suspect if he gets another White Sox hat or T-shirt reminding him that the Pope, that he is dope, or another bottle of Graziano Giardinera, Pontifex Maximus will be swearing off Malort for good. Illinois Treasurer Michael Frerichs, another local politician, visited, delivering an $8.65 unclaimed property check from the treasurer's office. The editorial says once he kissed off Frerichs, who rarely misses a PR opportunity, the papal obligations to his hometown were not yet done. Regional Transportation Authority Chair Kirk Dillard was on his way! ! So we're not the only ones that notice that the Pope seems to be spending a lot of time with Chicago politicians, or maybe he's getting ambushed by them in the papal square so they can try to bask in the glow of His Holiness. What do you think, Eleni?
Yeah, I think you mentioned this about somebody just now. All politicians are always looking for any sort of press opportunity, and you have this option on the table where you get to go to the Vatican, hang out with a Pope that's from Chicago, and get some free press out of it. I'm shocked they didn't charter an entire plane to fly all the elected officials from Illinois out there. So none of this is surprising to me, but I am curious that this is the second week you've mentioned the Pope, and I'm just wondering, are you jealous that you didn't get the special invite to go out there?
Several delegations have failed to invite me. They might be a little worried about the basilica just collapsing around us.
You probably haven't passed the religious background check. You probably failed that one. That's probably why you're not allowed.
There may be something to that. I did send one of our friends who was on the mayor's trip an episode or an image from The Exorcist. So that may be something that they were thinking about with me. Maybe we're going to go with that. They didn't think I was worthy. So, speaking of not worthy, and again, we are a little bit, let's front the fact that we have worked in a lot of sports developments around the country and in Chicago. But the Chicago Tribune had this sort of recap of another epic week in Chicago Bears. We can't stop talking about the Chicago Bears when we're not talking about the Pope, and sometimes we could talk about the Pope and the Bears. The Tribune's Jeremy Gorner, Olivia Olinder, and Jake Sheridan had a piece the other day saying, following a marathon week in which a legislative deal to incentivize a new Chicago Bears stadium on Arlington Heights collapsed, and the team announced it is eyeing Northwest Indiana instead, some Illinois political leaders blamed the Bears while still holding out hope for an eventual deal in Illinois. The Bears' announcement last Friday came about 4 months after the Indiana legislature passed a bill to aid the team in its move to Hammond, while Friday's statement from the Bears said the team's intention is to, quote, advance our stadium project in Hammond, Indiana. It continues with the exact site still to be selected. So to Illinois lawmakers, they view that as leaving wiggle room. So Cam Buckner, maybe he did a little press availability like the Pope does when he's on the Pope airplane. He basically said there's still a chance. After he had his conversation with Bears CEO Kevin Warren, Senator Cunningham said there was nothing new in the statement. That was echoed by Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson. But some lawmakers are, Rachel, a little bit more caustic in their comments. So Democratic Southside State Rep Robert Peters, who represents the area that includes the lakefront areas where Soldier Field is and where their failed city proposal of a few years ago was located, he said that this is Kevin Warren's fault for, quote, this 3-year cluster mess of the Bears Stadium, and said there were still details to work out in Hammond before we just take their announcement at face value. So what's your big picture take on this whole quote unquote cluster mess, Rachel?
I think it's been kind of fun over the last week to watch where the fingers are pointing, because they're pointing at like literally everybody, right? You've got Republicans pointing at Governor Pritzker for not being engaged enough in it during session, not spending enough time in Springfield. You've got a ton of fingers, probably rightly, pointing at Kevin Warren. You've got a bunch of fingers pointing at the mayor because he's not really helping anything. I think my big picture takeaway is I'll believe anything happens when something actually happens, when something is like actually announced and finalized. For now, I think it's just fun to watch the finger pointing.
So Patrick, we did get some additional analysis on the stadium talks from the Associated Press, who asked Pope Leo what he thought while he was on his flight to Spain. And the Pope says that's out of my pay scale. So there is a line about Chicago politics and sports that the Pope wisely will not cross. He may take on artificial intelligence and President Trump's war in Iran, but he's not going to weigh in on the Bears stadium. But Daily Herald has a story with the Arlington Heights mayor. You'll recall Arlington Heights was at one point in the pole position to be the home of the next Bears stadium and was going to be the beneficiary of the mega projects bill if that had passed in the recent session. And so Arlington Heights Mayor Jim Tonalia Monday called on Governor Pritzker, quote, this is according to the Herald, play the role of a head coach. And he criticized Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson for blocking and tackling. He said that the legislature's fail to pass a Bears-friendly bill was, quote, a fumble for the state of Illinois. And he says that Governor Pritzker, quote, needs to coach his whole group of elected officials. If you've got one guy trying to run a football down this way, another one running the football down that way, we're going nowhere. And that's kind of what it feels like. Producer Grace likes to keep track of tortured sports those are not my tortured sports metaphors, Producer Grace. So have a little asterisk on that if you do that this week. And, feel free to pop in a Chicago Bears super fan at any point.
That's okay. I shall bounce back, as will a certain assemblage of burly gladiators known to all as the Bears. The Bears.
But, Patrick, this is only getting worse. And the more that we try to have a definitive point in this debate, the more local elected officials try to keep it alive.
That's right. I think it is emblematic of what some would say is Illinois' reputation as a difficult state to do business. These are generational investments that come around once every few decades, maybe a century. And no one, to use the analogy you were just saying, is kind of taking the ball and running with it. Each one is pursuing their own pursuit, whether keep the Bears in Soldier Field, keep the Bears at Arlington Heights, try and do some other things. So these deals, to Rachel's point, to your point in discussing how the previous Soldier Field renovation went down, until everybody's locked in a room without a chance to leave and a timeline and an agreement to want to do something, it just seems like this carousel will continue. But, the other major challenge just politically is with the speaker's insistence that no legislation moves forward without majority support of the Democrat caucus. It's just very hard to understand how you're going to get Chicago Democrats to approve a deal to help the Bears relocate out of the city and into Arlington Heights, or vice versa. And, to use that phrase, the math doesn't seem to be mathing in that regard. The roll call isn't going to get any easier in this sense if you need a supermajority of the Democrats to put it up and at any time right now. So unless there's maybe some exceptions to that rule, it just seems like this carousel will continue to spin until a shovel goes in the ground somewhere where the Bears will eventually play.
Now, I am going to make another tortured sports analogy, Grace, that you can attribute to me, and that is that everybody likes to blast the head coaches when things don't go the way fans hope. That's certainly where Mayor Tenalia is in being critical of Democrat leaders and the governor. And I will say that it's never totally the coach's fault. And I think it's fair to say it's never totally the governor's fault. But Rich Miller at Capitol Facts reported an additional factoid that builds on some previous comments that Rachel and Eleni have made. So Eleni, Rich Miller said that Governor Pritzker was in Springfield for just 22 session days. And the one Senate Republican said this was a, quote, total lack of engagement by the governor. And Rachel has mentioned that the House and the Senate weren't actually under the dome at the same time very often either this session. So what do you make of this?
Well, I think we've heard this before about the governor not having been very hands-on this session, not just on this issue, but other issues. I think, there are reasons likely behind why. I don't think it's just scheduling issues. But it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out with the Bears, and what blame gets placed on him, not from any elected officials or finger pointing, but just from the public. I think that's what we're really all waiting to see. If the public is actually that upset about this, or if they're just like, just pick somewhere and let's move on. As somebody who listens to the Skarr regularly now, I would say, in my opinion, like, this too shall pass and the fans will move on, and they just want to get to the next season and get started. And they don't like, to me, it's not their fans are upset about the location. Yes, of course, there's upset about Hammond, whatever, but it's just more that people don't like the distraction. has created a distraction that the fans don't really care about, or don't want to be dealing with. So I think that's where we're seeing, and so that's why it comes back to what your question was of the governor not, being engaged. How much of this angst is real, and how much blame will be placed on him when the final decision gets made, if a final decision gets made.
Governor Edgar used to have a phrase. That's why you get a car, drivers, and a big house, and people call you governor. It's not fair, but it does end up on his desk, and he did take a mild chiding from Mr. Miller, who wrote, quote, "There's no substitute for a present governor. Legislators are generally a needy bunch." Rachel, would you agree with that?
I would say legislators can be a pretty needy bunch. That's pretty
They're
accurate.
very needy. So, sadly, the final play has not been called. Sports metaphor, Grace, in this saga with the Bears, and Eleni raises another question that I want to segue to, which is this even a crisis for the governor? Clearly, there's lots of other issues that need to be addressed, some of which got covered this session, some of which are still out there. There are serious questions about the stability of food for the indigent, the SNAP program, and healthcare for the indigent. And clearly there's tax issues that people are concerned with, and education funding, and the list goes on and on and on. And so it got me thinking, as I'm watching things transpire in Washington, and it turns out that I'm not the only one thinking this. There have been a couple of columns recently about whether or not there is such a thing as a political scandal anymore. So, first of all, the crime of bribery and corruption has been thrown up for grabs by the recent Supreme Court decision involving local Indiana officials who basically said that a local official that accepted a bribe was actually just taking a gratuity, like he was an Uber driver. And some of those nuances are still being worked out. We saw that affected the ComEd folks. There was a quote in an NPR story on this recently. Support your public media. Kevin Madden, who worked for former Majority Leader, U.S. House Majority Leader Tom DeLay, and he had a scandal that he was facing with funneling corporate money to Texas candidates that he was convicted, and then that was later overturned. And Madden was looking back at that, which was now 20 years ago, and I think he appeared on Dancing with the Stars as part of his recovery, compared to what's going on in Washington today. And he said, it's like, how quaint. It's almost like watching the silent era of film when you think about what was considered a scandal back then. And he had an interesting question. So if you look at the information landscape we're in now, which is hypersonic and supercharged due to digital platforms, we're in this constant, cluttered, fragmented media ecosystem. So Patrick, he concluded with this: if Richard Nixon had a Fox News or a social media army of Nixon supporters to mobilize, it could have been a different outcome.
I think that would probably be true. There's very few things that have any staying power anymore in terms of scandals for folks. And there are a variety of them that try to put their head down and bear through it. And the vast majority of folks don't know what's going on, or they don't believe it. One side says something, the other side disagrees with it, doesn't matter, or they'll discount it on a variety of things. So, yeah, I mean, I remember when, the adage in the early 2000s was, well, you know what? I'm not going to go there. It's a family-friendly program, so I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop myself. But the quality of the scandals has really gone down. There used to be some real good ones, and now it's like everything's a scandal. But if everything's a scandal, nothing's a scandal. And I think that's leading to the demise of the good old fashioned political takedown.
Eleni, he would have had his own hashtag and everything too. Tricky Dick. I mean, it just sort of writes itself.
Yeah. We love some good scandals here in Illinois. We've really outdone ourselves, so we'll see what's up next. I'm sure there's something brewing. I mean, never a dull moment here.
Well, I'll tell you what else is always brewing, and that is, Producer Grace, our Sounds Terrible segment. And those are terrible sounding trombones. So, Eleni, I think we owe you the leadoff position.
Yeah, so yesterday there was a basketball game on television that I'm sure we all watched. I did not, because whatever. But I did.
Even though you listen to the score and you're going to be co-hosting the Pope's sports talk show.
I did catch that there were these insane lines to get into Madison Square Garden yesterday. And tons of confusion. People were waiting for hours to get in. That was due to the fact that someone we mentioned on this show earlier was attending the game, only to then fall asleep during the game. So I'm going to go with all of that experience sounds terrible, and the Knicks lost. So
You know who didn't fall asleep and who was courtside?
I know.
Who?
Go, no, you go. You probably are talking about somebody
Former
else.
Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel.
Yes. Who should join our podcast one day. He can tell us a
dear God.
little bit about all sorts of things.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, all of that sounds terrible, but really terrible. What I was reading about was the bars and restaurants within the vicinity of Madison Square Garden that were forced to shut down because of this security perimeter. That's beyond terrible. So feeling for those folks, and it's very unfortunate for somebody to fall asleep for the whole person this was for to fall asleep during the game. It's unfortunate.
Well, I'm sure those bars will get another opportunity to cash in. The Knicks make the playoffs, make the championship, every 53 years or so. So should be no problem.
Yeah.
Rachel, what terribleness do you have to share with our viewers?
Before mine, one note on Eleni's. I was watching all of this happen throughout the afternoon, and this public sentiment building that just kind of was blowing back on the Knicks a little bit. And I was like, I know they've been winning all season, but I think this is going to be the day they lose. And I bet against them and made $20. So that doesn't sound terrible, but you could see the public tide turning. So
Profiting off the terribleness of others. That's what we like to, see.
What could be more terrible than that, right?
Wow.
So anyway, my sounds terrible for the day. We often discuss home-related issues. I woke up today. We had our air conditioner has been a bit sluggish recently. And so my husband had an AC guy come in today. He told us, luckily it's an easy fix, kind of. It's an easy fix. Something is frozen. So we have to turn off our air conditioner for the day. So I'm sitting upstairs on the upper level of our home, just watching the temperature slowly rise as I serve our clients. So if anyone sees me sweating on a Teams call today, I apologize in advance. Sounds terrible, but it's going to happen. So I'm going to be wearing lighter layers. I'll be in linen by the end of the day.
It's symbolic. It's symbolic.
But the good news is if we do it, it should be fixed by tomorrow when it's going to be truly like the surface of the sun here. So.
I would love to know what they charged you to tell you just to do
Turn
nothing,
it off.
to follow the cow.
Turn it off and turn it back on was ultimately the advice. So.
Patrick, can you top that in terribleness?
It's hard. I mean, I could remind Rachel she's got a beautiful public meeting tomorrow night. So whatever temperature her room is tonight at 4 p.m. in the sun, she would gladly trade that for angry citizenry amassed in a room that probably their air conditioner is probably going to be frozen as well. But I won't wish that upon you. I wish the HVAC to be working for you tomorrow. My sounds terrible is I have completely forgotten. My joshing of Rachel has led me to forget what my sounds terrible is.
So who needs the Prevagen now?
Yeah, that is unfortunate. Unfortunate.
Oldest white man I know. I will point out that in reference to tomorrow and yesterday, that yesterday will be 2 days ago and tomorrow will be today by the time we distribute this to our affiliates down the line. And I'd like to warn our affiliates that we're going to go a couple minutes over. At any rate, I have a sounds terrible, and maybe instead of sharing your terribleness, Patrick, you and Rachel and Eleni can help console me or help explain this to me. So the great former governor of the state of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, recently sat down for an interview with the Daily Northwestern of Northwestern University on the shores of Lake Michigan in Evanston. And the young reporter asked the governor, how do you reconcile your record as governor with the politics of the Republican Party under Trump, since the governor now refers to himself as a, quote, Trumpocrat, unquote? And the shameless former governor, always entertaining, says, quote, I'm a single issue voter. You get me out of jail, you get my vote, right? Bill Clinton used to say you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So, you can't have everything, but if you get me out of jail, you're my guy. So there's that, and that's terrible, and lots of other things. But this reminded me of something that I've been in denial about for quite some time. Governor Blagojevich was interviewed by the Daily Northwestern because, like me, he's a graduate of Northwestern University. I've been in denial about this. Now, the reporter was able to suss out that he spent the first 2 years of college at that Ivy League institution known as the University of Tampa. And then he transferred to Northwestern because, quote, I always had my heart set on Northwestern because it was always considered one of the top of the line schools. And it just really made me feel like my sheepskin really isn't worth that much. And it's pretty terrible that Rob Blagojevich and I are basically in the same alumni association.
Was he excommunicated from the Wildcats? Was that like a privilege that was denied when he was impeached by the Illinois Senate? That his lifetime membership get revoked?
Yeah.
No, he's still obviously allowed to come on campus, and Eleni wants to have him and Ram on the podcast, which
at the same time. That's
a great idea.
I would watch.
And we would get more viewers. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that he got admitted to the University of Tampa. I'm not even sure. Back then, they didn't have online college. Maybe that was an online college by 1977 standards, but how he got into Northwestern, and I think he did the university proud with his service and his appearance on The Apprentice, and his development as a great political thinker and philosopher. You get me out of jail, you get my vote. That sounds terrible. Everything we've said just sounds terrible, except for the fact that the Pope has got a new sports talk show. That's Patrick. That's Rachel. That's Eleni. Producer Grace. She's producing this hot mess. It all is terrible, and we look forward to bringing you more terribleness next week. Thanks for watching.